So yeah, thanks again for having me. I'm here to talk about CultureQuest, which is an AI native game that we developed through a sort of three-way collaboration between the University of Bristol, which is where I'm based as a senior lecturer in digital futures, with Meaning Machine, who's an industrial partner working in the deep tech and gaming space, and Bristol Museums and Art Gallery. So I'll talk a little bit about conversing with AI in museums. I'll then talk about the sort of process we went through to design CultureQuest, and also the research findings that we took from a player study that we conducted after we had developed the game, and then sort of outlines for the next steps that we think we might take following the learnings from that study. Like I say, CultureQuest was a collaborative project between Meaning Machine, the University of Bristol, and Bristol Museums. We were funded by Digital Catapult back in April to July last year. So this was a 3-month project, pretty much a sprint from start to finish. But in that time, we built an AI-powered quest system that uses Meaning Machine's technology to unlock new ways for visitors to explore and interpret museum collections. Why did we do this? Well, we had three main questions we were looking to tackle or start to unpack. I mean, they're very sort of knotty questions, and we absolutely didn't think that we had any of the sort of definitive answers to any of these, but we were interested in the role that generative AI could potentially play. So challenge one was that we knew from talking to museums that GLAM institutions, that's galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, were largely being encouraged to use Gen AI in a variety of ways. We know that it opens up interesting possibilities, but also significant pitfalls for cultural heritage interpretation and user experience. There have been some projects, some of which you may know, that have been sort of heavily criticized for the way in which they sort of unsensitively engage with the complexities of the past, of where objects have come from, their provenance, etc. So we were interested in, can Gen AI power engaging, creative experiences fundamentally that are curatorially co-designed, culturally sensitive, and tailored to visitors? Challenge two was that we know that GLAM institutions are vital spaces of public learning, but they've seen year-on-year decreases in visitor numbers and funding. We also know from research that immersive experiences have been shown to drive first-time and indeed repeat visits. So we were interested in whether Gen AI-powered gamified systems could encourage active visitor engagement with existing cultural heritage collections. So this was, we know immersive experiences are powerful, but we also know how difficult they are to deploy and sustain. Can we create something that is slightly more scalable? This leads to challenge three. So tech-enabled experiences that incorporate user-generated content and interactivity and enhance visitor engagement, but they're difficult to deploy and maintain. So we were wondering whether a mobile-based Gen AI-powered app provide more of an accessible and scalable solution that supports existing models and indeed is delivered in existing cultural heritage collections rather than being its own distinct thing. How did we do all of this? Well, we designed an experience that gave life or used as the sort of core characters for ancient Egyptian gods. And we put them on a mobile phone in the middle of the Egyptian gallery in Bristol Museum and Art Gallery. So you could talk to the gods, they would set you quests, they knew where they were in the gallery, they knew what was in the gallery. I say everything here when I say knew, everything is all in inverted commas, obviously, but they were designed such that they could articulate that space, articulate their role within Egyptian mythology and religion and within the context of the gallery as well. And they could direct you around it, provide you with a quest that you had to go and complete. And that quest involved going and investigating deeply different aspects of the gallery using both the touch screens, the information displays, actually your own sort of process of deductive reasoning, working out what was what and what things may have been used for, all in the purposes of a kind of single coherent story that you were going on throughout a sort of half an hour playthrough. What did it mean to actually design this quest? Well, as I said, it was based in the Egyptian gallery. It was built in Unity, a well-known game engine for those who are less familiar with games design. This sort of is an engine that saves you a lot of time around how you actually build a game. It was using Meaning Machine's game-conscious platform, so we were using a proprietary platform to actually build the kind of AI conversational interface, and then we put it in Unity to create the game experience. You are an ancient Egyptian woman in this experience. You're Lian Amenes Nebetar. Her coffin is in the gallery. Her remains are not. We're very we were very considerate of the fact that the gallery itself is going through a reinterpretation of its role as to um, how it should host and present and display remains, elements from afterlife and ritual practice. This is very much sort of something that's presented and raised as a point of discussion within the gallery. So we wanted to lean into all of these things because they're really important ongoing live debates. So we did give you a player character, but we didn't give you a kind of a body as such. The whole thing is that this is taking place in a kind of more conceptual space. So you're this character, but you're in the afterlife. Your coffin is there as kind of the inception in the story, and you talk to 4 Egyptian gods on your journey through the afterlife. You wouldn't have actually met other characters in the Egyptian afterlife other than the gods on your own journey. So we really modelled this on the kind of the process that one may have gone through in the imaginative context. The gods set you quests involving gallery objects. They all have distinct personalities and goals that they set. And they despair of their awareness, as I said, of both the surroundings and their context within ancient Egyptian belief systems. And your goal is to fulfill the quest that are set, to navigate the Egyptian afterlife, and to reach ultimately the weighing of the heart test and the field of reeds at the end. As I said, we worked with a proprietary system, and this was really important because while many of you may have done this, and other people have indeed done this, you can go into a gallery and ask ChatGPT to guide you around it. There are significant drawbacks, let's just say, to that as an approach. It will not hold. You can role play only up to a certain extent. The actual sort of database that it's based on is very problematic, has a lot of gaps within it. But at the same time, that kind of Q&A process is something that we were actually quite interested in. I actually think of games these days, especially AI native games, as inquiry machines. So we were really interested in taking the sort of the findings from some of the research we've done into historical games and applying it in this context. And that involved working with this system, Meaning Machine's conversation creator, which effectively allows you to predefine an entire game world, a whole set of characters, timelines, locations, basically in the entire game world that you then it then sits on top of an LLM. It's LLM agnostic, so you can point it at any model that you want to. It can run on device as well, so you can point it at a small language model, and you can redefine all of these different elements of the game that then hold. So it holds its memory, it holds over time. You can also build in a knowledge database. So you've got, we're able to sort of feed it a whole set of resources approved by the curators, and that we're up to date, useful, and verifiable information around ancient Egypt, as well as sort of giving all the characters their own backstory and their own way of appearing in the game, their own way of conversing with the player character. So it gave us sort of a lot of freedoms to work with. As a structure, we lent into game design methodologies. So another benefit of working with Meaning Machine is that they gave us a sort of model that they thought could work, and then we adapted it in the research team for the context of the Egyptian gallery. So you start with Osiris, who is the god of the dead, so he's a sort of guide in this context. He provides you with the initial kind of quest to find out who you are and a bit about your life. And then once you've done that, you go on and talk to Anubis or Mars as a sort of forking path that splits people off around the gallery. Mart eventually sends you to Ra, who you have to do the final quest with, and he ultimately sends you back to Osiris. And the way the sort of the quest structure works is that one of the gods will ask you to find out something, because they all need something from you. Ra, in this case, is actually terrified of crocodiles, because he has to fight them every single night when he sails through the underworld. So we had the idea that he actually needs your help and support, so you need to go and find a spell to ward off the crocodile god. And so you have to sort of find out a little bit more about the crocodile god Sorbek and the kind of offerings that were given to him. There's a baby mummified crocodile in the gallery, and you need to find out a few sort of key words within that context. And as a sort of ancient Egyptian person in this kind of context, you would have had to have remembered spells. That's what all the hieroglyphics on coffins were around for protecting you in that context. So we were leaning into all of the different elements that would have made sense in this context as well, which actually worked very well for inputting in a text-based experience. And you interface with that text-based experience in a kind of WhatsApp context. So we informally called this Gods app while we were developing it, but it's a WhatsApp-style interface. It was really quite rough and ready because we were building it in 3 months. But the idea is that you go to a QR code of one of the giant cardboard cutouts of the gods, you scan them, you can talk to them. You can ask them absolutely anything, but they will also sort of try and keep you on the quest structure. They will half of their sort of phrase will half their response will be related to what you say. Half will normally be around trying to keep you on that sort of quest structure. And that sort of flexibility is key. It's what enables people to ask anything they want in the context of the gallery, or indeed in the context of ancient Egyptian religion and mythology more broadly. And the system's very good at responding to ridiculous questions, as one can see on the right here. So I said I'd touch briefly on the research findings. We conducted a player study as part of the project because we were interested in whether we could at least start to answer some of those questions we raised at the start. So we invited just under 40 people to come and play the game. Our single independent variable on the project was whether they were in groups playing the game or individuals. Our hypothesis was that this could work potentially for groups. We know from talking to other museums that the sort of the standard you're trying to reach, or the sort of, it's not quite the right way of saying it, but there's a if you can create an experience that works for families, works with different demographic groups, different ages coming together, then you've really got something quite special. It's very, very hard to do. Our hypothesis was that this could potentially speak to that kind of demographic, and I'll go on to explain how that sort of came out in the study. Participants completed a pre-study questionnaire about their experience, knowledge, their experience in museums and their knowledge of ancient Egypt. And then we had a post-session interview as well afterwards, where we asked about their overall experience, character design, narrative, educational outcomes, and the approach to the quest system. And we also went with every single group through the experience. We got a sense of how they played it in the moment. Our initial findings, and I would just emphasize these are initial because we are still conducting the analysis. We've got sort of our broad brush thematic approach to studying the interviews has defined sort of 8 dimensions under which people have sort of shared their insights. One is that the dynamics is absolutely key. So I mentioned about groups versus individuals. This really did work for groups. So we found that by and large, those with groups got much further through the quest system. The quest structure, the story itself, they treated it like an escape room. They were able to work collaboratively as a team and set each other off to do different parts of the quests. They could problem solve as a group, and they sort of were able to have quite a lot of banter with the gods. That being said, it did sort of work to a degree with some individuals as well. And some people in the groups, as you can see of some of the quotes, did think that they could have done better as individuals. And there were challenges even when you did do it as a group, that the individual with the phone holds the power. So it didn't always feel as distributed as it might have done. The characterization came up time and time again for every single group. So the whole sort of personalization of the gods was central to this, which was everything that we had put into it. So one of my most favorite quotes of it is, I got into an argument with Anubis. It felt very much more alive. People like the antagonism, the sassiness of the characters. And in addition to that, they liked the narrative. They felt that going through the experience, going through the gallery, with this experience was a narrative-based one. They felt like it was a gamey sort of experience, but it was narratively driven. It did help to fill in some of the gaps because that gallery does have a narrative, but it's quite fragmented. It's the touchscreens were sort of developed around 2005, so they are feeling really quite old and clunky now. So there isn't a lot of interpretation out there on the walls, which means that you are doing a lot of mental kind of arithmetic to try and fill all the gaps with what you're seeing, and that people found this quest experience helps them on that path. We saw that it did actually impact engagement, which is one of our key sort of interests. People said it made you look around more closely, felt like being a kid again, and that people who had been to the gallery before but never really engaged with it prompted them to engage more. And that was something we had observed. We observed that most people walk around the gallery in less than 20 minutes and linger very, not for very long on any individual part of the exhibit. We did also find that things didn't work as well as we'd hoped. People wanted a much clearer sense of their objectives, and they needed a sort of progress bar. So we needed more game mechanics or more sort of obvious game features. It needed to really be integrated with the exhibit. This is something that we felt would always be the challenge, but in this case, it's probably the biggest challenge. How do you actually seamlessly integrate this? I mean, maybe you never can. But there are ways we think we could do better. Um, and that is in part by improving the user experience. So, for instance, the keyboard doesn't cover the messages, and that you could switch more easily between the gods. Um, and finally, we felt that some people felt that there could actually be two different versions of this, that you could have different versions for different age groups. And finally, our learning moving forward is that if this was to work more broadly, and we were hoping here to build a set of principles that could work for constructing a gamified experience in different cultural heritage contexts, not exclusively contained to Egypt or Egyptian galleries, or indeed the Bristol Museum where we worked, that this could work, elsewhere. So we learned that from the study that we could actually formalize the kind of group individual mode, and you could make sort of affordances for each. We know that you need to really tailor the narrative and raise the stakes a bit more. So the Egyptian afterlife is actually quite a difficult one to raise the stakes for because it's all meant to go very well. There's nothing's meant to go wrong. There are sort of some existential risks out there, but actually the whole point is that you're well prepared and can overcome all of them. So in a sense, there isn't actually a lot of stakes. So perhaps we need more stakes. We also need to support progression, have more of a sort of progression bar, character map, hints, etc. All those things that we're used to in a game context, but that we didn't have time to sort of fully implement here. We need to focalize the exhibition more and support kind of live interpretation. This was a tricky one. How do you tell a character you know where you are? How do you show that you understand what you're looking at? That sort of interfacing is really interesting, and I think will always be a challenge. Part of what could help though is making the gods more helpful, as in offering to support you on that journey rather than sort of just asking the same question again and again when you don't quite get it. And finally, there's that multimodal input is something that we think would be helpful here. People wanted to be able to talk to the system, voice to text. The reason we didn't lead with that is because actually voice to text is quite hard to do in a space like the Egyptian Gallery at Bristol because it's already quite noisy. And then with groups, how would that work? So I think there's a few things to work through there. And I'll leave it there. Would love to take questions. Thanks for listening.